Muted. Always muted. Hey, everybody. Welcome. I'm going to do my whole spiel again. Welcome back. Good afternoon. We are, oh my God, still waiting on Courtney to check in with us and let us know that they're done for the day. So I imagine they are not done yet. Oh my God. So while we're waiting, I figured we could all check in and go over some of what we've been working on this afternoon. But this is a great question. I'm going to pin it because I want to ask her that. I don't know if everybody saw her notes from earlier today. She referred to Nick McClellan as Tom Selleck. That is his new name because of his new mustache that he's sporting. So while we wait, whoop, that's not what I want to do. Thank you so much, Rochelle. That was so sweet and so unnecessary and much appreciated. Okay. I'm trying to do too many things at once. My computer sounds like it's going to outer space. Okay. Oh, God. Hello, sir.
Hello there.
Welcome. You look really handsome tonight.
Really, I just had to put the old fedora on.
Yeah, it's fedorable. So, oops, we are gonna share my screen really quick. Ooh. Okay, so I went and DB and I think some friends have added the timeline that we shared earlier today. We're still adding to it because there's a couple of things that we noticed are discrepancies or just not like clarified very well. So for example, we talked about Rick Allen being put on suicide watch in November, but then today we learned from Warden Gallipo that he was actually put on suicide watch the end of April, which could just be because I don't know. So we're adding to it. I mean, there's a couple different things I want to do.
Can you explain the lore behind this?
The lore character? behind what? Oh, your character?
Yeah.
Why don't you explain the lore behind him?
Okay, so if you guys don't know, there's another channel, a very funny Delphi channel that had a kind of androgynous little white character.
He is androgynous.
And I made a Chad version, like a Chad cool guy version of him.
He is androgynous and he is a cool guy. Why don't I share him? I'm going to share him. We've got time. I'm going to share a link.
Yeah, sure, why not?
I haven't thought about him in a long time. Anyway, all of that to say, I guess I can put this in the...
Can you see the resemblance now?
Yeah.
It's the Chad Chooch.
So this is our drive. Does that link work? Can I do a link as a... Am I a mod?
Are you a mod?
Can I do a link? Okay, well, click it. If it doesn't work, I'll share it somewhere else. I am a mod, though, right? I can share a link. I can share a link.
Yeah, I think you're the mod of this channel. That's correct.
Okay. And then... I don't know. I've been feeling like we need a Choo Choo Crime Tube resurrection or something,
Absolutely. There's some good stuff in there.
There's some really good content. for Chooch right now. Hey, Tech Death. Oh my God, Tech Death is here. This is Choo Choo Crime Tube. Lots of fun. We need to delete this one because he's not downvote dad anymore. He's just downvote. But this is.
Oh, well, I like that guy. That guy's fine.
He's funny. Okay, fine. We'll leave him. It's
Great
a good
intro
video.
videos.
Yeah, this is true. He's a hell of a promo that guy can make. So this is Choo Choo Crime Tube. It's really funny. You should check it out. There's the link. And we have Choo Choo Chad, Choo Choo Crime Tube Chad in the.
Yeah, I don't know. Chad Choo? I don't know.
Chad Choo? Chad? Hey guys. Still nothing from Courtney, which means I think we can interpret that as they must just really be going. Makes me a little nervous, but so
any Indiana Department of Corrections psychologists in the chat or anything?
Report this video. No, don't report this video. Do you think she testified this afternoon? I think she maybe testified this afternoon. We lost Chad, but I think that she probably did. And I was thinking, DB and I were chatting a little earlier about how Dr. Walla kind of the prosecutor really screwed her when he screwed the defense and accessed their ex parte filings because her name got out without any context or we were all just associating her name with these incriminating statements made to her, and as like a psychologist, we were all pretty horrified, like, oh my God, she broke or I was like, oh my gosh, I wonder like what the circumstances were. She broke client confidentiality, and that's a big deal, and kind of associated, there was like a negative association with her, and that was probably super unfair, and it's really unfortunate that Nick decided to put her on blast like that publicly in emotion. Interesting, Tammy. I hadn't heard that, but I mean, oh no, we've got an impersonator, an imposter. I don't know, Tammy. That's interesting. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe it was a long day. Maybe he actually.
I don't know, man.
Hey, Fiend. This is just totally speculative. Like, I agree with this, Christine. Like, totally speculative and based on nothing. But depending on what testimony they're getting into this afternoon, maybe they don't want Rick there for it, or maybe they don't think that maybe he doesn't want to be there for it. I don't know if they're going to be showing video. I don't know what they're going to be doing. I mean, if he did, in fact.
Well, do we know that for sure?
We don't know. We don't know anything for sure.
Do we know?
Speaker check. I don't think your speaker's working. I feel like Dean, you're on a panel and you're in the chat. Someone reported that she was, okay, so Dr. Wall, hey, Kaylee K. Smith. So nice to see you. Yeah, somebody reported that Rosie was questioning her. Interesting. Thank you, everyone who's been giving us, there he is. There's DB, everybody. Nobody panic. He's back.
Sorry to kick you off.
Well, you guys will work it out, I'm sure. I hope that this has been helpful. It's been helpful for me to go back after the fact. Oh, I know what I was going to do. If you missed this morning, here are Courtney's notes. I did post them on Twitter, X, and somewhere else, but these are the notes from this morning. If anybody wants to like refresh. DB, what sticks out to you? Hello, beautiful friend.
I don't like to say Indiana.
You don't like the state of Indiana, yeah. Fair.
I don't know. I think the one thing is like they're really pulling on the threads of these issues with confidentiality.
Yeah. Yeah, they are. I'm thinking of how Judge Gull is going to. It's hard because we're not there, so we can't really see how she's like reacting and responding to everything. It's hard to get a sense of like this is funny. I mean, ideally this scenario would never come up, you know? Having your most, I mean, imagine your most private thoughts and feelings, but disclosed to a mental health professional, being disclosed publicly it's just horrifying and being used against you, you know, being weaponized against you. Cleveland's
yeah,
on
what
a
do you think
mission.
about any recent Susan Hendricks interviews?
Look, I'm supposed to be on my best behavior, so
You're right. My bad.
you're gonna get me in trouble.
Y'all just go watch that shit and come back.
Just go watch Susan Hendricks, and afterwards,
And good old prosecutor Nancy Grace.
Nancy Grace and Susan Hendricks had some things to say about their observations of the defendant today. And it's just so interesting, you know, the perspectives and how varied they are, you know, depending on who you're listening to. For example, Yellow Jacket, Courtney yesterday was telling us that Rick looked stable and like in good, you know, good alert and good spirits. He was kind of looking up and bobbing his head around and whatever. Today, she said especially he looked alert. He was like nodding his head with his attorney Baldwin and agreeing with him. He looked at his wife and mother, made, you know, extended eye contact, said I love you guys, was kind of looking around the room. Nowhere.
I heard another podcast. They said that he was bobbing his head to hip hop music in his head.
That's what I heard.
He was a criminal.
Yeah, they said he was listening to violent hip hop and rap music. Yeah, I heard that.
He was listening to Sean Price.
Yeah. So I mean, it just depends. Yeah.
Also, Nancy Grace said that on the Bridge Guy video, it didn't look like he was looking down at his phone for a stock ticker.
What is with Nancy Grace? I can't quite figure her out. Sometimes she makes me laugh and I think she's awesome. And then other times I'm like, Nancy, stop.
She's a motherfucking internet cop.
She's an internet cop. Well, cop gonna cop. Hey, Dan. Hey, Royal Lee. Hi, Cleveland. Hi, Judge Jessica. Yeah, so I didn't hear anything from Courtney this morning about Rick glaring or looking angry or looking mean or mean mugging, but apparently Susan Hendricks and Nancy Grace, although Nancy Grace wasn't there, but apparently Susan Hendricks said he was glaring at me, glaring at the family. Okay, maybe he was. I wasn't there. I find that very hard to believe. Very hard to believe. So. Were all the confessions to Walla Walla? Hi, Sharon Wright. No, we're calling them incriminating statements, but confessions. They said that there were, 61 statements made over the span of 2 months, according to the state, made to mostly guards and suicide companions. I think Dr. Walla was at least one of them. I think they mentioned a medical professional. Am I forgetting? Oh, they said
a psychiatrist, a male psychiatrist that they talked about before.
Yeah. I wonder if that's someone different than the medical professional. I don't know. And then there was, a chaplain. This was interesting. They said that he apparently Oh, I must have missed this. That makes sense. Apparently he confessed or made statements to the chaplain, but they can't find this letter that he wrote. So obviously they can't admit that. I don't know. Yeah. No audio. Did my audio go out?
I think they meant no audio on the videos.
Oh. The videos of Rick. Yeah. Sorry, I know DB's trying to catch a bus, so he's in and out. But thanks, Mar. Thank you, Judge Jessica. I think that, yeah, the state is kind of wanting to pick and choose what statements come in. What else from this morning? I'm just trying to kill time until court is done with court. Yeah. Why do we think they want certain ones left out? Probably there are some that are contradictory. I know. Thank God I don't know. I've said some pretty questionable things, so I just wonder. Did he make statements in writing to the warden? So I believe that his after work bus, he's trying to get home from Chipotle. The warden testified, I believe, let me just pull it up, that he did. Let me see. Let's look together.
All I said was the warden tried to contact the warden.
Well, didn't he say,
and the
yeah.
warden put him on a round or something?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Oops. Gallipo. If you see it, DB, just holler. I'll stop. Oh, here it is. So 3 to 5 statements he's heard about through cell door, aka through the slit in the door, although Gallipo never documented them. Quote, I killed those girls, sums up the contents that he's heard about. So that's the extent, as far as the warden knows, of these incriminating statements. I killed those girls. Okay. It's not great.
I don't know. I heard some YouTubers said there's going to be some incriminating statements today. So,
well, then we probably are in for. I trust those YouTubers with my life, to be honest. So, it doesn't say anything about a written, right, statement to the warden, right? I don't think, but he tried to contact him. He followed the protocols for that. Oh, Mr. Allen. Okay, you're right, DB. What else is new? Written request to speak with Gallipo and confess. So he didn't confess. He just. Where's Yellow Jacket? Oh my God. Courtney. Okay, do you want to come on, Courtney? Like, fuck the notes. You want to just come on? I'm just going to send you a link. Oh, DB already did. What am I even here for? I could just sit and enjoy the show, I feel like. You know? You guys are, like, amazing. You're sending me 25 more pages?
I'll get Courtney, the pages, and then she's got the link.
Oh, okay. Courtney, come on. You don't have to do video if you don't want to, even though I'm sure you look beautiful. But Courtney says Walla was heavy, like her testimony, I'm imagining. He went to the bars. What are bars? I saw that in her notes this morning. he went to bars and said he wanted to confess. I believe so, Radar. Oh, bars in the cell door. Okay. Yeah, cell. Like the bars on his kitchen cupboard Harry Potter room. Yeah. Let me send you notes and drive to hotel. Okay, fair enough. Fine. I feel like that's a good compromise. Courtney's gonna text me the notes. Ugh. Yeah, Jill, the eavesdropping bars. The bars of his cell door, I imagine. This is a great question. We know that the AG moved him. Courtney, I know you're driving, so I'm not going to ask you questions, even though I want to. Yeah, it was the Indiana AG. Interesting. And we still don't know, like, why he was moved. When was that? December? Was that that was before his... Okay, so that was before Brad and Andy were reinstated. But he had his new attorneys, and they didn't even know he was moved until after he was moved, I believe. Can you talk about Brad Holder's verified alibi? Not really. Can somebody talk about Brad Holder's verified alibi? Because I know Fiend, actually, where is Fiend? Is he still in here? Because he was tweeting about it and actually probably would be way better than me to talk about it. Hey, who dis? Hi, Fiend. Fiend, do you want to talk about Holder's alibi while we wait for Courtney? Let me send you. Nick said he's clear, so nothing else to discuss. I can. Cool. So we're not just sitting here watching me blink. Okay, I send it to you on Twitter. The tweeter. Hi, Owl on the Prowl. It's a cool name. It's a cool name. It's a good name. Good username. Hi, HCC. Trying to catch up. We haven't yet. Oh, hi, Michael. We haven't yet really covered anything. Courtney is driving back and texting us like all million pages of her notes, but she did say that it was really difficult. What did she say? It was rough. Listening to Walla's testimony was rough. That's what I understood from this morning, at least so far, Hoosier. But I don't know what if they got into specifics like this afternoon. Haven't heard anything specific yet. Yeah, neither. So many dashing friends we have with their radio voices. Speaking of, hello, darling fiend.
Hello.
How's it going? Welcome to.
What the fuck?
You were quiet for too long, DB.
Yeah,
DB.
I saw my face on the screen.
I know you were like.
I
Wait
don't
a
think it was
second.
me. I got very confused.
So somebody wanted to know. Well, first, how are you today? So nice to see you.
Thanks. Yeah, good to see you. I'm doing all right.
Cool. Good stuff. Somebody wanted to know if you could get into the specifics of Brad Holder's verified or unverified alibi.
I can, based on kind of just very generically what we know about what happened yesterday. If anybody is on the Twitter, I tweet sometimes, so that'll have the details where you can follow along. But so Jerry Holman, and I don't like to praise them a whole lot. Just Murder Sheet kind of gave a very streamlined version of some of the events of yesterday, and I'm sure they'll do the same today. They seem to completely conflate some things, and it's painful, but on some basic stuff they very simply stated some things, which was very concise. And one of the things that I never heard this from other places as well, is that Jerry Holman on the stand, he estimated the time of the murders to occur between 2:30 and 3:30 p.m. And there's a lot of question of is this the person that should be estimating the time of the murders? How is he getting that time frame? How sure about it is he? What's backing that up? What evidence is there that really substantiates that? But we didn't get any of that. We just got him saying it was 2:30, 3:30. And then he also went into some of the details about Brad Holder's timeline. And the basic pieces of information are that he clocked out of work at 2:45 p.m., which that's been the understanding since the Franks memorandum, although it's questionable whether he was the one that clocked out, or and whether that was ever verified. And spoiler alert, it wasn't. And then he arrived at a local gym at 4:08 p.m. So we know what gym he went to because he's got a ton of Facebook posts from that time frame. So you can kind of map it all out. And okay, if he just clocked out of work and drove to the gym, that's a 34-minute drive, if you're driving the speed limit, and but the time between clocking out at work and arriving at the gym, that's an hour and 23 minutes. So you've got almost a whole hour that's not accounted for. And that would be the sort of situation where you'd be like, well, do we really know where he is during this time frame? Because just driving from one place to another place and you've got a whole missing hour, where was he during that missing hour? That's really the long and short of it, because we don't really know much more than that. But I think it's a question of, wouldn't you want to verify this guy's alibi by actually having somebody with eyes on him? That's something that they didn't do.
Seemingly not.
So who was the one that verified his alibi?
The guy that verified was tasked with verifying his alibi was Frederick Rogers, or Fred Rogers.
He's the Pulaski.
Yes,
yeah.
Pulaski officer. And he has some connection. I'm not sure how close of a connection, but certainly a connection to Brad Holder, or to a person very close to Brad Holder. So you'd think you want to keep some bias out of the equation. And then especially when you end up with the end result is, well, he didn't actually review videotape of Brad Holder's vehicle at work, and he didn't actually talk to any of his coworkers that actually saw him. And like, you know, there's just a lot of questions of like, well, I mean, even if you take everything as it stands, you know, there was time for Brad Holder to drive to Delphi before he drove to the gym. And he may not have spent a lot of time there, but like could have spent some time there. And like, you know, they're not trying to like build a theory that Brad Holder is, you know, the singular person involved in this crime, but like, you know, just speculatively, like, could he have driven there to participate in the crime and then been like, oh, you know what, I backed out and then left and gone to the gym? There was time to do that, certainly.
Well, and like,
and it also
any of this evidence.
It also kind of matches
go
up
ahead.
with what he said. It also kind of matches up with what he said, is that Westfall is involved with this, and like they had a falling out by a creek. So like you can kind of imagine a scenario where like maybe he didn't know what he was getting into and then just left. So he may not have been there very long. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I'll go. DB, do you need me to do anything with these?
No, I'm doing it right now.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead. Now you go ahead.
I forgot.
Okay. Well, so that's not a very satisfying or convincing, right? Alibi. You would hope that they would. I mean, like, is that how they cleared everybody's alibi?
I mean, that's unclear because I mean it's seemingly not, because you know there's it comes up a number of times where like anything related to Brad Holder is kind of like appears to be treated a little bit differently. You know, they've got 101 phone extractions with people that don't have, with a lot of people that don't even have like hardly any connection to either of the victims. And then you've got, you know, this guy that was believed to be a suspect, you know.
Yeah.
Not a suspect. He was a state Odinism expert, wasn't he?
No, that was much later, because even early, even at the highest levels, Doug Carter and Jay Abbott discussed Brad Holder being a suspect. So he was a suspect, and like they knew the connections between him and the victim or victims, and potentially both. And you know, I think the that's kind of what the defense has kind of been getting at, is like, you did all these other phone extractions, you didn't do this one? Like, are you kidding me? And you know, I don't know, man. They're very adamant that they didn't do a phone extraction, but I'm telling you, if one turns up like 5 years from now, you're like, the whole thing is dunzo, you know, like that's the sort of like Brady violation thing that just, you know, there's no getting around it. You can't lie that you had this phone extraction and then just never turn it over. So, but it's strange if there isn't one, because you went through a lot of work to get all these other phone extractions. Like, what's one more for like somebody that's much more closely connected? Oh, I thought we were frozen because Mothman just has her hand over her face the whole time. I think I've lost sound.
No, I'm muted again. Always.
Oh, you're muted again.
I'm always
Man,
muted.
it's so confusing.
I'm so sorry. No, I was just reading Courtney's notes, but I had to stop because they're difficult to read, so we'll go over them. But she says, "Tell Michael that Brad came in."
Them.
Thank you, DB. Tell Michael that Brad came in dick first and dropped Indiana IPAC into Indiana prosecuting attorney. What is that? IPAC versus Michael. This is from Courtney. I'm just going to put it in the chat for you. And I want to go over these notes.
Indiana Prosecutors Associate or Council or something like that, isn't it?
I think it's something. Yeah.
Prosecuting Attorneys Council.
There you go. Got it. All right. Are they in order? Or do I need to order them?
They should be in order.
Amazing. Perfect.
I may have heard through the grapevine some spoiler alerts.
Yeah, these are really hard to read. Okay. Loading. I wonder if it would be. Oh, there we go. All right, let's do it. Okay.
Oh, that's number 10. That's not in order then.
That's okay. That's right. Here, I can do. We'll just
Let's
find
just
one.
start with 10.
Here. There's one.
Do a countdown. Top 10.
There's like 30 being so.
30. Oh, wow.
There's a lot. Well, I don't know if there's 30. There's like 30. There's a lot. So page 1. Fuck. All right. Before we do that, I'm noticing there. Oh wait, these are. Oh, my bad. I'm looking at the wrong ones. No, I'm not. Yes, I am. These are from yesterday. I put the wrong ones up. My bad. Let me try again.
Let's just do a recap of yesterday first.
Again, let's do another recap. Fuck, where did I save these? Oh, is that? Did you? Fuck. I'm all out of sorts. Give me a second. Oh, I know what I did.
Just like to say I sent the wrong ones. I'm sorry.
Oh my god. Okay, thank you. I thought I was going crazy.
Thanks for finally confessing, DB.
I was like, where the
I'm so sorry.
I was
Guys,
like,
don't hurt me.
I was like, where the fuck did I save these? I swear I saved them. Okay, let's try again. It's okay, DB. It happens. I never make mistakes, but I'm told people do. So we're not going to crucify you for that. Upload file. Round 2. Here we go. Ay, ay, ay. Okay. Starting with, now they are in order, DB, so thank you. You've redeemed yourself. Hi, Sleuthie. Oh. And future ex-husband. All right. Page 1, maps. So maps is, we're picking up again with maps. Technically a cop. She secured the letter to the warden. She never alerted the attorney. Eventually it got to law enforcement somehow after lunch. Okay. Holman is on the stand. Holman is called by Rosie. Nobody can find Holman.
Fuck off, dude.
I thought that they couldn't find Murphy, so they also couldn't find Holman? Like,
No one can find Holman.
What is up with these guys?
Nick says he's not gone. He knows that he's first. He's probably down in my office. Holman is found. So we found Holman. I
thought he was in Nancy Pelosi's office on January 6th.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's easy to speculate where he was.
That's so stupid. Okay. Okay. Okay, Rosie says, are you familiar with Rick's detention? Holman says yes. He went from Carroll County to White County to Westville to Wabash. Holman says yes. Some of his conducts and statements are of ongoing investigation. I don't know what that means. Holman assigned Westville to monitor phone calls. Harshman veto on side in chain. Rich Davies Mullins Harshman conducted interviews at Westville. Holman heard that Rick made, quote, confessing. So he subpoenaed records, wife, mother, COs, and inmates. No one told him. Monitored phone calls was the first tip-off. So he's listening to, obviously, all of his phone calls. I don't believe anything this man says. How about y'all? No? Okay. Number 2. So Holman coordinated with GTL, which is the phone, right? The phone company thingy that the prison uses, to surveil per Rosie, monitor per Holman. Holman says it does not include attorney calls. They listened weekly or more. Fucking creeps. Harshman primarily listened and documented once things of interest were heard. Then they subpoenaed all video from cell, companions, logs, etc.
Yeah, I recall them doing that subpoena.
How fortunate for them. The warden eventually informed them that Rick wrote a letter. There was nothing from IA. They continued to monitor his calls. Holman has not asked for additional info since the first time they asked. This is Courtney's opinion. She thinks that Rosie's going to prove that Holman got what he wanted and then stopped, which makes sense. Holman would only get calls of interest sent to him. He never heard anywhere that Rick asserted his innocence. His investigators procured them for him. Holman went to Westville to interview the companions, Rick's guards, etc., to procure more statements. Holman never asked if he asserted his innocence, and some guards did tell him that unprompted. Okay. How are we doing so far? Interviews were very to the point. Did you hear him confess? Only got extra info if it was volunteered. He can't remember for sure, says Holman. Nobody interviewed IA is internal affairs, right? We decided that's what that means.
Usually,
Correct.
is, yeah.
Okay. So Holman, nobody interviewed IA, Walla, or the warden. Holman got access by calling a number, and a person would let him in.
So I believe
mean, so
IA technically would be maps.
Okay.
I mean, IA usually does like investigations on like
Misconduct and shit, right?
right. Yeah, they do like they're investigating themselves for like something they did wrong.
Yeah.
Like guards bringing in the pack for the homies, you know,
Right.
or like
Right. Oh yeah.
yeah,
So
somebody's
yeah, I guess there might be like a broader IA. I didn't think about that. There might be a broader IA like in the prison system because that is a major issue as far as guards bringing in contraband and whatnot.
Me and All Eyes are on the same page here.
Yeah.
Yeah, Investigator Maps is the head of IDOC IA for Westville Correctional.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. So
You're welcome.
remember what we talked about earlier, DB, about Holman?
Tone, tenor.
Oh, well, yes, tone, tenor. No, your tone and tenor, both of y'all are just being lovely. Perfect gentlemen this evening. No, but it's interesting. Holman just got access to Westville by calling a number, and a person would just let him in. Nice.
That's such a Holman statement there. I called a number.
Yeah, a person just let me in.
Like if you put in all of his statements into ChatGPT and told them to generate one, that's exactly what it would fucking be.
But it's also just what he says. He just says he's gonna call a number. Like he said he was gonna call Judge Gull, but like he didn't actually do it. So like
You're lucky we're not on my channel.
is his story just that he called a number, or is there an actual like a different story behind that?
He said, I mean, that's his story as to how he got access into Westville to conduct these interviews. He just called a number and a person let him in.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe if we don't move on, people will kill us.
Okay, sorry. So Holman even went into the control unit. That's interesting. So one of Rick's statements says, I used a box cutter and I threw it into a dumpster at CVS. Initial interview with wife and daughter. Holman never interviewed or doesn't think that they interviewed friends of friends. Okay. Hours spent monitoring. Wait, didn't we hear this exact?
Yeah, it was. They were checking to see who all was let into the control center earlier this morning, or from this morning's examination by maps. I guess Holman just gets to go right in the control center. And
He just
also,
go right in.
what kind of criminal? I don't want to say criminal mastermind. Never mind. Who throws away a murder weapon at their work?
Well, then maybe not a mastermind. I mean, that would be something extremely like, if they've got a recording of them stating box cutter and that's actually accurate, that would be like pretty
I'm gonna tell you right now.
significantly convincing. But yeah, I mean,
Don't be
that's
gross.
not-
No
I
fucking way.
don't know about the box cutter thing.
Don't be gross. I know no other way. First of all, second of all, there ain't no fucking way. That's what was used. But okay, let's keep going. So, hours spent monitoring Rick, hundreds of hours. Holman even involved in another case with monitoring and log sheets. Yes. He asked. Okay, so sorry. Blah, blah, blah. Rosie asked Holman, "Have you ever been involved in any other case where you are monitoring, like calls and log sheets, etc.?" Holman says, "Yeah, I think so." Rosie says, "Which case?" And Holman says, "I can't remember." "Have you ever been involved in a case that had companions?" Holman says, "No." Diener now comes in, I think, and says, so Holman never interviewed Rick at DOC. It is easy to monitor calls.
Yeah,
it's done often.
Absolutely.
You wanna
Sorry, I was just getting my exhibit
wanna-
ready for the end of the page.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So Diener's like, it's easy to monitor calls. Officers, whatever, you do it all the time. That's it. Holman's released. That was short. You got off easy today. Rosie calls Dr. Walla. She's the lead psychologist since 2017. Prior, she's always worked with DOC. Go ahead. Sorry.
Is it not showing the video?
It's trying.
I was gonna say it's interesting. He spent hundreds of hours after. It's not gonna let me make my great point.
Can I
Which is
play
okay.
it? It's just play. It's like playing, but it's not playing anything. Oh, you want to try again? You want me to
Anyways,
try?
it was it's Holman saying, whatever we got to do, basically, we're gonna find out who did this, and just like his interview with Rick, he wants to find it. He's doing hundreds of hours listening.
I know you did something. You did something, and I'm gonna find out.
That's right.
Okay, well, he's certainly trying. So Dr. Walla is the lead psychologist since 2017. She's always worked at DOC. She was assigned to by administration to treat Rick. She communicated about personal and private matters. They had contact frequently, varied, daily for about a month upon his arrival, and suicide watch weekly for 4 months until April 2023, which is when shit hit the fan. DB, do y'all want to take over?
Yeah, we could do
You
that.
do?
Fiend.
Again, you have the notes, DB?
I do.
I'm just going to let y'all cook then. Don't make a mess of my
Oh, you're in good hands.
StreamYard. Yeah, I know I am.
We've done 4 YouTube videos together, Fiend and I. So
Excellent. Okay, I'm going to listen while y'all go. So go. Thank you.
Tech Death Hippie, don't leave just because she's not here, dude.
Bye, Tech Death.
So got the free cameo right there.
Yeah, why not?
Just for Tech Death.
Can you see this, Fiend?
It might be a little bit rough. Yeah, I think you might
Yeah, on
have
the
to
mobile.
take the
That's
lead.
okay. Okay, so never interviewed Rick at DOC. This is Diener, Stacy Diener crossing Holman. He never interviewed Rick at the Department of Corrections. That's Holman. And then easy to monitor calls. It's done often. That's it. Home and released. Okay. Rousey calls Walla. Oh shit. Oh, I already read that part, huh? Oh, okay. Rousey. So lead psychologist since 2017 for Westville, I'm assuming. No work experience assigned by the administration to treat Rick, usually DOC work. Communicated about personal and private matters, and the contact frequency varied. The contact was daily for about a month upon his arrival, and 5 times checking, I'm assuming, watching, weekly for 4 months until April 2023. Then the checks and conversations went back daily with her or her staff, master's level therapist, which, questionable.
So not a doctor. Damn it.
Not a psychologist. Yeah.
Yeah, but not anybody you would call a doctor.
Yeah. And then four under her. So she must have 4 master's level a therapist under her. And contact usually occurs while Rick is in the cell during the rounds or at the cell door. And he's offered to be out of the cell 1 time a week, like most likely for 1 hour.
Right. Yeah, I would assume so.
And then rounds consist of how you doing through a door slit. They don't even open the door, the port door, which is the door underneath the window that's scratched up that he can't see out of. Which, if you guys, Walla is the one that allegedly did this complaint and did the complaint about the window being scratched and had them replace the window. Because if you're back there a lot, I mean, I'm sure that doesn't help your sensory issues when you can't see who you're talking to and stuff.
What's that? That's MH rounds?
Yeah, mental health rounds.
Mental health rounds for people in solitary.
See, where we're from, Fiend, our background, round means something different, don't it?
Right.
Okay, and then for people in solitary, sometimes Rick's in a cell, but not a 07. Maybe that's a facility classification or something.
Yes,
Rounds
designation.
Okay. Rounds on a
dozen a day, not much time.
Oh,
spent.
okay. Rounds are or on. Okay, whatever it is. I don't know. Thanks a lot, Angela.
Turn the page.
Rick was placed in a holding area for her visits. So maybe that like kitchen area that they're talking about, the holding cell back there. And he was on suicide watch from RDC when he arrived. Didn't sign anything because he couldn't have a pen.
Which is interesting because today he's allowed to have a pen or yesterday he was allowed to have a pen in court, or this morning. I think it was this morning. It's all blurring together, but it does seem like his condition has changed or his designation has changed because the restraints have been a little bit lesser, and he's been allowed to have a pen and sign things in court.
Oh, that means April 7th? Maybe. Sell by not until April. I don't know. We'll have to wait for her.
I think April 7th would make sense as far as some of the time frame.
And she doesn't know if...
Did you skip a page?
No, I just went back.
Okay.
I went back and looked at April 7th and came back for it again. Is that okay? You want to go back?
No, I think you're good.
Okay. She doesn't know if she addressed confidentiality right away, which is strange. But
That's like the Miranda thing all over again. Like, what the fuck are we doing here?
yeah. But a waiver was eventually signed. She didn't know 8 items that don't qualify as confidential. What are the circumstances of his cell?
Didn't even know. Okay. Man, I can't imagine somebody working in like the prison system and not like being fully aware of like that sort of stuff.
Right, because a lot of times the confidentiality is really not an issue once they're actually an inmate in prison. It's more of a jail
Right.
thing.
And you were talking a lot about like, hey, well, what are the exceptions to all this? And she just completely clueless about that stuff. Like, that's concerning.
I agree, but maybe it shows that she didn't know about the homicide exception, which could go both ways. So he's in an 8x12 cell, 7 hours a day. He gets rec weekly. She thinks he's supposed to be 3 times a week on rec at least, I think. And there's actually some public documents out there about serious mentally ill and suicide watch. For IDOC, it does seem like 3 times a week is much more appropriate than a single time a week. If 5 times watch, no rec, and they wear smocks, caveman garb. Settlement determined for rec because wieners out. What? Yeah, I don't know. Diener objects. How is it relevant with psychology, like a psychologist or something? Maybe the psychology evaluation. Razi says she should know about anything like that. Moving on. Okay.
I agree. She should know. She probably know everything about that. Literally her job.
And then she probably viewed cell video. I don't know if I feel like she would know if she viewed it or not, but he paced a lot. It could be a form of rec, 15 steps each way. She thinks he had a light on at all times. She doesn't know about suicide watch. What? So if you guys followed earlier today in the morning, she's in charge, allegedly, per Gallipo, with assigning people to like putting them in suicide watch status.
Right. So I mean that's a systemic type of like major concern that the
Feed cut out. I don't know. And it says it's probably a good idea to have the light on anyways. She noticed he has a scratch window, which is like the port kind of above the chuck hole, and acknowledged he slept and ate on the floor. He told her there was a bug problem and rats. She says it can be distressing. Rick in one of 4 of the most isolated cells in the prison. Other inmates yell, yes. KYS or baby unaliver. That's my YouTuber lingo, guys. I've been working on it. She says it bothered her. Also, the noise bothered him and her, saying it was loud. She also says she was familiar with Rick's cardiac condition, his diagnosis, and a long episode of depression and his medication. And there's no formal process for a psych evaluation. It starts with a structured interview, 15 to 20 minutes. She knew he had MDD, and by this standards, it's not a serious condition, but she disagrees.
believe that's major depressive disorder.
Yeah.
So just general depression.
By their standards, he knew he had MDD, and by their standards, this was not a serious condition, but she disagrees. Okay, so she's saying by DOC standards, it's not considered a serious mental health condition, but she disagrees. In 2019, he was hospitalized for depression and has been on psychotropic medication since 25. It sounds scary, but I think it's psychotropics are pretty common for MDD. But I think we have some mental health professionals in the chat that can help with that. File indicated he was at risk of suicidal ideation. He had a diagnosis of GAD, which I think is generalized anxiety disorder.
Mm-hmm.
That's correct. And then more severe anxiety when separated from, I don't know, PD, Code D. Was Rick at some point?
From family, yes. I think maybe fam.
Okay.
Code D was Rick at some point.
Oh, maybe that was his radio code. When they talked about him, they used Code D just to not.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
Yeah, I think so, because they mentioned, it was mentioned earlier somewhere in these hearings that they tried to limit how many inmates knew that he was even in the facility.
Oh, okay. A through E are stages of acute and acuteness of symptoms. E is the psych ward. Newcastle is usually a top choice for somebody in E. Oh, maybe this is what they're talking about. A, B, C, D, E codes. And then he was at the D level of that code.
Gotcha.
I don't know. Fragile when admitted. So when he came in, he was
fragile,
but
admitted, thrown in solitary, verbally taunted. Is he an eggshell? Yes.
Okay. Amy, any records? He was suicidal at intake? No, but high risk due to charges. Administration was going to keep him there no matter what she said. In A/07. He was on restrictions until he left Westville, and that's 3-ish hours of rec a week were offered to him, and then he had a suicide blanket, a hard blanket. Question, did you order companions? She said no, nothing at all. Oh my God, thank God. Yeller, please.
Hello.
You
can get a glass of wine there?
Oh my God. Like, I walked out of there and screamed in my car for a couple of minutes.
Okay, so you left a little bit early, right? There was another witness, but you said fucking him out.
Harshman dude that I've never heard of, that y'all were talking about when I was listening last. He came up to the stand. Since he was the one who listened to the recordings, hopefully he's actually saying what was said. But my ass couldn't take it any longer in that chair. I told Bob, I was like, I got to get out of here. So.
Okay. So general thoughts throughout the day, like give us a couple words that you are thinking of when you look back on this afternoon.
So Walla was the main focus. She was up on the stand as a witness for about 2.5 or 3 hours total.
What did you think of her presentation?
So
she seemed caring, concerned, or
very caring. Rosie didn't take it easy on her. There was some things he called her out on, asked her some really tough questions. She knew they were coming, and she answered them all. I mean, she could have lied to save herself, but it took a lot of guts, I think, for her to admit the things that she admitted, even though that wasn't a massive focus of her questioning, just in relation to like the social media stuff. Sloppy note taking, and that weren't really even her fault. It's kind of just DOC processes and protocols are not up to par with what, maybe a private psychologist would be doing with their documentation. She owned it. She owned all of it. She didn't try to make excuses for anything. And the things that she shared in her notes with Rick that were kind of presented in a timeline fashion, which was amazing because it really helped kind of put a whole story together of her observations and everything. I was crying, like I was in tears. I heard lots of sniffles in the room. You could have dropped a pin in there and everybody would have heard it when she was going through this. The words she was using that she made, like, it's documented, she made notes of it. It's bad.
Did she
Kathy
get emotional?
and us were sobbing.
Was she emotional?
She wasn't emotional. I mean, she was kind of going through this very clinically, just kind of, this is what I said, this is what I noted. There was a few moments when I caught her when she was talking about Rick. She would actually look at Rick while she's saying it and just kind of give him, I don't know, I just called it like a matronly smile. Like, I'm talking about you and I'm saying you did it. Like, and she's just kind of looking at him like, you know what I'm talking about. So, I mean, she was kind of engaging with him a tiny bit whenever she was talking about him, which was nice.
Did he seem to glare at her, or did he just look upon the court normal?
I couldn't tell. I mean, I'm just looking at the back of his head, really, so I can't see how he's reacting. But he wasn't animated or anything. I mean, he just sat there and was watching from what I could see from the back of his head.
Okay. So we've gone over a little bit of the notes, but if you want, you can just keep running it, like your thoughts on it, or we can go over the notes. And
Yeah. What page are y'all on?
8.
8. Yeah, I mean, I can kind of go through it quickly. If you see any, sorry, I'm standing up. I've been sitting on like this hard wooden chair the entire day. My ass is so numb.
No, you're good.
I'm like standing up, trying to get like some activities going on here.
Yellow Jacket, are you able to bring in like one of those stadium cushions that like they put on chairs? Or like
Hello from the hotel today and sat on it.
Hey, this is my co-host Fiend, if you don't know. Yellow.
Okay. So I did bring a little something to sit on, but even that gave out after a while. But like there's like this little throw pillow in the hotel and I brought it and sat on it today. All right. Well, let's start on page 8. If y'all see any important questions or y'all have any commentary or questions along the way, just stop and ask me. They asked her, did you order a companions for Rick? She says, no, I didn't do anything at all. I can suggest it. I don't control that. That she and Rick both had problems with his companions from the start. So the plus program, the companions, they are forbidden to interact with the people they are partnered with. They're not able to ask them questions. They're not supposed to talk to them at all about anything. They're just supposed to sit there, literally watch them, observe, write down any notes about their behavior, etc. So pretty much right from the start, they were talking to him about the case, asking him questions. And then they were going back and telling other inmates about it. And then there was even an incident of one inmate that, was playing this telephone game, actually calling up his family and telling his family on the phone all about it. Which is just
oh boy,
all kinds of bad. And Rick was telling her this. Rick was telling her he was frustrated with his companions. And Walla agreed that this is not a trustworthy process for monitoring potentially suicidal inmates or people that need 24/7 monitoring. This is not a trustworthy thing to be doing.
but she didn't suggest
She can suggest it for patients.
She can suggest it, but she didn't. Right?
Seems like it.
When Rick said they were asking him questions, she didn't do anything about it. She said she doesn't love it, but it's the system. Again, there was a lot of instances where she's kind of asked about these things and she kind of just defers back to I don't make the rules here. I just work here, you know, like,
Well, she's a contractor.
yeah, this is how it's done. I can talk about it all I want. It's not going to impact change, you know? Like, basically, she didn't say this much, but she was basically saying they're not going to care about my thoughts and opinions here.
In the boys' club.
This is a big one. Companions are paid.
So they're state jobs.
They are jobs. They are prison. They are jobs in the prison.
I mean, that's not. I would assume as much.
Yeah, I mean, I might have read something about this before, but they're paid. In March 2023, they brought in a psych expert, or they wanted to bring in a psych expert from ISP, whatever that means. Walla thinks it was shot down. She thinks the doctor's name was Dr. Goldberg.
Who do you think they is referring to? Nick McClelland and the Unified Command, or like the
Probably Westville.
Oh, okay.
Well, there is no they. Oh no,
Asked
right? There's no they there.
Yeah, she was asked to go talk to Rick about it to see what he thought. She wasn't really allowed to tell him what he should do, but Rick said, I don't think that's a good idea. And she said that she's told him she agreed with him. So she believes Dr. Goldberg never came and saw Rick.
Okay, so March 2023, psych expert for ISP.
I think that was like either from or for, like, whoever ISP would call up as their psych expert to come see an inmate.
Okay. You say psychic? No,
Yeah, psychic. So Dr. Walla had, just asking for scope. What did you? I'm going over page 9. What
okay,
would you do with Rick?
I was just gonna say R&M Productions commented here. You can make a YouTube channel if you want. You can say whatever you want. Like,
hey, stop me if you got things.
Thanks for the input.
When I get about 2 more pages in here, you're gonna lose your fucking mind. Like, you are gonna, like, it's gonna blow your tits clean off, straight off.
Oh boy.
All right.
okay,
So
page 9.
services, counseling sessions. Rick was the first and only pre-trial unconvicted patient she's ever had. Sometimes they went down the hall for more involved sessions. Sometimes Rick would agree to do this. Going down the hall for a private session meant he went to this other little, she said it was a small triangular shaped room. And within this room, like built into it, was a 3x3 cage. That was her words, a 3x3 cage. It had mostly concrete walls and then like vertical bars. Like the way I wrote shark cage, the way she was describing it sounded like a shark tank. She did go to Wabash once to visit him. I think she goes into that a little bit later. That was surprising.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Was that because she was at that point he was like her client or like her patient? Or did she go to Wabash often? Because that's quite a distance.
I mean, later on she explains if Centurion asks her to go to any other facility, then she'll go and she'll do that as requested. But her normal 9 to 5 is reporting to Westville.
Understood. Okay.
At this moment, she was.
So yeah, it does sound like she's continuing with her patient.
Described there was a difference in the setup for private sessions at Westville versus private sessions at Wabash. Is the only reason she even mentioned it at that point in time, like just where he was contained and what that was like. And then Rosie goes on to describe kind of like what a traditional therapy session might look like, where there's comfortable chairs, there might be plants, there might be nice, ambient lighting, like a couch, something to make the patient feel very comfortable and secure with, very cozy what's going on. Dr. Walla agrees, yeah, this is absolutely nothing like that. She never did what she'd call a therapeutic evaluation.
Hey, We have a really good question here from Cleveland. What did Gall look like when she was listening to all this? Did she seem concerned?
I'd say very neutral. She didn't look dismissive or disinterested. I personally know from lots of people with personal experiences, as well as how she has behaved on other cases. Goal historically has not been mental illness friendly. She actually spoke up at a convention one time that she thought it should be an aggravating factor, not a mitigating factor. So
Okay.
okay, she didn't have any expressions that looked like eye rolls or this is dumb. She was a lot like she was yesterday, just listening to everything extremely intently, taking notes, looking at her computer, like just absorbing it all. Or at least putting on a good show that she was, but she didn't look shocked or dismissive at all. There was really nothing to read. She had her poker face on. Walla never did what she'd call a therapeutic evaluation, but she did provide handouts to Rick on depression and anxiety. She provided him with a book that I think she said was called Man's Search for Meaning.
Are you fucking kidding me? the handouts. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I love a
Okay.
crossword, but
Oh,
fuck.
mean,
yeah,
when-
right. DB.
cross puzzles, crayons, matte pencils.
Jesus.
When
Christ.
she's talking about it, I mean, you can tell the way she's saying it. She acknowledges this is so weak. Like this is like I know this is dumb. This is just what I'm allowed to do. She said her abilities are limited by admin, DOC. She has basic conversations with inmates. She can talk about meds. We talk about suicide a lot to make sure that they are safe. I should also mention she had like 2 or 3 attorneys with her today.
I also saw that she had like 4 or 5 like cops walking her in.
She did. So while I feel like she really laid it out there and answered everything extremely honestly, I mean, most of everything I'm going is not her words. Like her participation on the stand was yes, no, I would agree with that. It was Rosie saying, would you agree that this, and this? Yes. On this day, did you put this in your notes? Yes. Like she did not like do a whole lot of elaborating on her own.
What is interesting that she brought up that book specifically, seeing how, yeah, it is, as Chelsea and Luke said, focused on as somebody who survived a concentration camp.
That is very interesting. I hadn't looked it up yet.
She could have just said, I gave him some books. She said
could've.
that book in particular.
I mean, that seems like pretty prescient in the situation that he faces himself, you know.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna go to the next page. We're about to get into it. Angela's about to combust live on TV, live on your phone. All right, page 10. Did you ever talk to Rick about exceptions to patient confidentiality, patient-doctor privilege?
No, I didn't.
Well, I think we discussed it earlier that it's clear that she didn't even know what the exceptions were.
Yeah. She said, I don't think so. She was asked, do you know what the exceptions are? And she rattled off literally everything except when they make statements related to a homicide that they are charged with. She rattled off when they talk about harming themselves, harming others. There's like 7 or 8 different things. And she like listed every single one of them except the big one.
Well, we don't know. Sleuthy Goosey's question here. So why did she tell anyone? We don't know if she did yet. And I think some of Rosie's questioning in the beginning, yeah. It seems like they were trying to pull on that a little bit.
She was asked, did you ever get him to sign a waiver, like understanding confidentiality, what we're going to talk about, what's privileged, what's not. She said she doesn't know. And then she went on to detail that she technically works for Centurion. It's a DOC contract. Her paycheck comes from Centurion. It like switches every 3 years. Usually, like every 3 years, the contract comes up for bidding. So it was a different company 3 years ago that she worked for, and then I guess she switched over to be on Centurion whenever they took over the contract.
Yeah, so you won't see any lawsuits between citizens incarcerated and Centurion that are older than 3 years because they were called a different name. So it's
Right.
very helpful to change your name every now and then.
Company, or if they just like rebranded themselves as a new like LLC or something. But yeah, I think that's it. So her or the other behavioral health people, they would do rounds each day, and then they make these reports from their rounds. They usually do them daily within 24 hours of making the rounds. But the original notes are shredded. Like whatever they are like writing down as they're going through, those are destroyed and shredded. And this is going to be something that pisses Rosie off.
The notes, the
As
psychiatric notes or the psychological notes are shredded.
Yes, they put it into
What
a
the
form,
fuck?
put it into a web form that they fill out, but the actual notes
It's
are
the paper notes. But so they're recorded, but they're not allowed to be like smuggled out or anything.
Yeah, kind of.
Okay.
They put it like they basically put it into a summary that goes into, a database with a template that they use.
It's kind of like the Dan Doolin tip narrative, like
Yeah, is that exculpatory?
Written on a napkin, but then destroyed. But it, like whatever was left was put into the Orion system, and that's what we got left.
Yeah,
that's what we're trying to figure out, Sleuthy.
She agrees with Rosie that those notes are the best record of what took place and what they talked about. She says he proclaimed his innocence a lot in the beginning. He was very focused on his wife, very worried about her. In December of 2022, he told her he was being treated really bad. And then everything is about to go to fucking hell. Angela, did you see my notes? I couldn't hear what she said about what he came in there with a diagnosis with: a history of generalized anxiety disorder, and then also a history of something PD, which is a more severe anxiety when separated from family and support system. Do you know what that is?
Oh, I'm sure somebody in the chat, or maybe Fiend, do you know? It's like something. So PD would be a personality disorder of some type, right?
It was like something PD, and basically it was a more severe anxiety disorder, like that's really triggered when you're separated from your family and your loved ones.
Right. MMD, major mood disorder, is one of them. But that PD one, let's see, what slide was that? Because we're gonna come back to 11.
Y'all read off the part about how at some point he was a code D.
Yeah, so that was the A through
of E.
Yeah, so that means that he was code D, not a code A, not a code B, right? Code D.
Code D. The worst code he can be is an E, and that means you're basically in restraints at the psych ward.
The psych ward. Okay, so here at the top, it's on page 7. It says HX PD ? More severe anxiety when separated from family. Yes. DPD? That dependent personality disorder?
Maybe.
BPD is borderline personality. It might be. Yeah, I mean that's probably what it is. It is because
BPD?
Borderline is like actually like based in like an anxiety of separation and abandonment and stuff. But like it presents like
Panic disorder.
I don't know. Separation anxiety disorder, I think, would be like the the most one, dependent personality disorder, but borderline personality disorder also kind of like it all comes from the same sort of place.
It was a personality disorder. I remember those words, and I was like, "What?" Because like my feelers went up because I was like, "She say like antisocial?" But then she described it as like extreme anxiety when separated from your loved ones, and I was like, "Okay, good. That's not what that was."
Well, borderline personality disorder can be extremely like severe and like result in very antisocial behaviors.
Yeah, I don't know anybody like that.
Okay.
Angela, I want you to come off mute because as I go through this, I want your reactions to it. Are you
I
there?
think she's just listening. Oh, you're here? Okay.
Why is she there?
I think she's just listening. She's traveling.
Okay. What's she doing? Okay, I'm gonna sit down now. Hold on. All right, I'm tired of pacing around.
Okay, but can we ask somebody else that was there? Somebody in the chat that knows anybody else that was there? Can we just see if they caught on DPD? It sounds like it is DPD, but if anyone else has it in their notes, that'd be good. But we can go to the next part if you want.
Okay. All right, so this next part, Dr. Walla actually talked, and she said she said all of these words. Rosie would ask her, about her notes in March of 2023. Like the first one, she agrees to this. The rest of them were actually all her words that she wrote, and she spoke them. And I was like, fuck. So in March of 2023, wait. Yes, okay, sorry. March 2023. This is when things started to get pretty bad. In December of 2022, he told her that he's being treated really bad. Skip to March of 2023, he told her, I don't feel right. She acknowledges that his baseline is depression. Like that's his baseline as a human being, depression. On April 4th, she described him as poor, critical, deteriorating. Suicidal ideation, delusions. He stated death would bring relief. He had insomnia, poor appetite, hopelessness, low self-esteem, and more.
Awful.
Bad.
I'd hate to cut to this right now, but Sleepy said she's going to ask Bob. Right now, let's not assume that it's anything. People are going to come watch this and be like, oh, somebody said this in the chat. This must be what it is.
Yeah.
It might just be better if we wait to verify what the condition is. But go ahead. Sorry.
That's fine. I agree.
I'm trying to get a verification on that.
On March 12th of 2023, he was noted as being more critical. He was banging his head. And when I say banging his head, he was taking a running start from one side of his cell and smashing his face and head into the wall on the other side. And other forms of self-harm.
And I assume that it's going to get worse from here. So if anybody wants a trigger warning, here's a trigger warning.
Yeah.
And from here on out.
I mean, yeah. So at that point in time, they did what they call emergent involuntary meds, which doesn't mean it's part of a medication program. It means they like ran into his cell and gave him like a heavy dose of, she later on clarifies it's Haldol. So they stick them with a needle. So they do what they call emergent involuntary meds, which is just done one time in an emergent situation. The very next day, on April 13th, 2023, she noted he had a grave disability. And if anybody here is in the medical world, the word grave means something different to medical professionals than it does anybody else. Grave means like the worst you can be and not be dead. He has a grave disability. The stuff with the feces. At this point, they are considering involuntary medication, different from emergent, meaning like regular scheduled involuntary medications with a needle. A hearing was held, and they did decide to start involuntary medications on a schedule. We'll later learn that means Haldol injections once a week. Sometimes oral Haldol added at nighttime to help him sleep, because that still wasn't enough for him. All right, you can go to the next page. Everybody all right? Everybody hanging in there?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it was dead silent in the courtroom when they were going through this. Kathy and Janice were just like crying into their shirts. It was bad.
I wonder if they even knew all of this.
Probably not. I mean, I'm sure they knew a lot of it, probably not laid out like this in a progression and like a day by day diagnosis. They probably did not. On April 21st, Dr. Walla had a conversation with Rick, and it related to incompetency to stand trial. Remember, he had a trial scheduled in May?
Right.
Yeah. Though that's not her call. If he was deemed incompetent to stand trial, that would not be her call. I'm not sure whose it would be, but it wouldn't be hers. She thought at that point in time, things were going downhill. He was having disjointed thoughts. And this was weeks before he was to go to trial. On May 3rd, he told Dr. Walla, "I want to confess." And I guess he said that to her multiple times. And she said she often questioned if he was being genuine and truthful when he said these things to her. On May 17th, mind you, when he should have been at trial, on May 17th, she noted he had disorganized thinking and it was accelerated. On May 18th, which is noted on page 177 of her deposition, on May 18th, he was due for his next Haldol injection, and she noted he was in a vegetative state of depression. On May 22nd, she noted he was having a psychotic reaction to stress. What the fuck?
And yeah, that's her.
I mean, just to interject, like this is
so bad.
Like other countries, other civilized countries don't fucking do this.
This is against everything.
It's you know, you can go to someplace in Europe and this isn't the way it is. Like, this is really bad.
And later on, you will learn that none of this fucking mattered to anybody with the authority to do something about it, because his safekeeping order trumped everything.
And his safekeeping order was built off of some Facebook posts, right? That they never even went and followed up on. That he was in danger. People were threatening.
Yeah. No, Dr. Walla was asked, she's asked later on, when you were there at Westville, did you ever hear of any threats made to him? Like, was anybody actually threatening him? She said people, were taunting him, screaming things at him from other cells, but like actual attempts on his life or, like threats we were taking very seriously, no.
Yeah, and there's a quote up here from her that I'm not going to get to yet, but it's pretty bad. But we can continue.
In June, when trial should have been over, mind you, depression was at its peak. It hadn't even peaked yet. In June, it peaked of last year. He was showing physiological symptoms now. He was trembling. He was stuttering. His knees were buckling. His eyes were bulging. These people are fucking sick. Sick. Just to watch a man doing this. To watch a man doing this for at least 3 solid months. 3 solid months while Jerry Holman is proudly saying that he had like a whole ass person being paid to monitor his phone calls and procure the things of interest to him. Can you imagine?
So he had somebody that spent 100 hours listening to his calls and monitoring him?
Oh,
or was that him?
Spent more than 100 hours. He listened to 100 hours of,
Okay.
I mean, or yeah, one or the other.
Hello, Travis. We have Travis here.
Except the things that were of particular interest to him that were, pulled out and sent to him so he could hear the stuff he wanted to hear, the confessions. Jerry didn't need to hear anything else he was saying or doing.
And we have Travis here, our legal expert. He can tell us that this is indeed fucked up professionally.
Like there's nothing else. There's no other way to describe it. Anybody who is hearing this or was there hearing it or is like hearing it repeated verbatim, quote for quote, and thinking he's just faking for attention or like, who cares? He killed kids. Like, fuck you. Like, just fuck straight off out of my line of sight. This is tragic.
Somebody who'd go through all this, I mean, even months removed, a year removed, their behavior in a courtroom should not be, every micro expression they make probably does not need to be examined by lay people.
Absolutely not.
Especially not in bad faith.
Like when we're hearing about this behavior, and mind you that he led a very normal, stable life before he went to Westville. He held down a job with a major corporation for 10 plus years. He had benefits. He was an assistant manager. Before that, he worked for a different massive corporation, Walmart. He took care of his family. He had a wife who obviously loves him to death, a daughter. Like this man has known since he was 25 years old that he suffers with major depression issues, anxiety issues. He took care of it. He treated it. He was medicated. He sought help for it. He sought treatment for it. And to the outside world, anybody that knew him and described him would never have described him as being off. Like we have a million people that knew him and described him as being a really nice guy, a really great guy, totally normal. Not the guy who was always spazzing out and doing some weird like anxiety, depression shit, right? Like this guy was aware of his problems, treating his problems, and functioning as a normal adult before he went to Westville. Anyways, I digress. On July 11th of 2023, Dr. Walla noted some signs of restoration. In October, they're still having their cage sessions, and he is proclaiming his innocence to her often, but saying that he's already been sentenced.
So he feels like this is going to be the rest of his life.
Yes.
This is it. He's sentenced. This is exactly what he has to look forward to.
Like
if he doesn't even go to trial.
I'm never getting out of here. This is my life.
Crazy.
She said maybe 12 out of the 3,000 patients that she sees that are in Westville right now, maybe 12 out of the 3,000 get regular injections of Haldol.
Unreal.
Yeah,
Sophie, we're going to type these up.
If you want to go to the next page. Now we're in November of 2023. He, she notes he's still being taunted and harassed a bit by other inmates. And this next part is just kind of a collection of things that were in her notes over a period of time. It wasn't necessarily November. It was just kind of like have these things been in your notes at some point in time? And she gave an affirmative answer to it. He was having a break. There is a psychotic process occurring March through June. She gave him a diagnosis of psychotic. He was catatonic, disorganized speech, serious mental illness in her notes. And you're going to learn serious mental illness fucking means something to DOC.
It does.
To a big lawsuit that DOC faced. That word, serious, SMI, serious mental illness, means something. They don't just throw that around, loosey-goosey.
Right. It changes what type of protection somebody has, what their ability to stay in solitary is, what unit they're in, what color jumpsuit they wear, I believe also.
It changes everything. It changes everything for everybody except Rick Allen.
That's crazy.
Rosie gets mad. Like, you can tell Rosie's getting heated at this point. Rosie says, he was sent here for safety, right? As a doctor, do you agree he met criteria for severe mental illness? She says, no doubt. And he says, yet the court says, Rick, you're safe here. You're safest here. Rosie says, the fact that he's physically safe here doesn't change his brain. Dr. Walla says, correct. Then they go on to talk about the things that serious mental illness statements change about any other convicted inmate. He actually would have been treated better if he was a convicted inmate. So if you are a convicted inmate, if you're a normal inmate there, Dr. Walla says you have SMI. You can only stay in solitary confinement for 30 days per Indiana codes, per things that are in papers and documents and rule books. Dr. Walla acknowledges this. She acknowledges that the reason this is in place is because of the known documented effects of solitary confinement. There are some very rare exceptions to this 30-day with an SMI diagnosis. And it's mostly around if this person is deemed an extreme danger to other people. And she clarifies that's not Rick.
And so they're saying that serious mental illness means that you're a danger.
No. If you're diagnosed with serious mental illness and they keep you in solitary for longer than 30 days, the only exception that they can do that with is if they deem like you would be a massive risk to other people if you weren't in solitary.
Oh, Rochelle D. Great question. Do you not have pretrial facilities? You must not. You must be newer to the case. A little background. He was going to go to a jail, which is in the United States, a pretrial facility, usually with all pretrial inmates or people that have under a year serving for or a misdemeanor. And
like the people go if you get picked up for a DUI, like the county clinker.
Yeah, the clink. And he was condemned to go to a prison in solitary confinement without an attorney just a few days into his arrest, and has been unable to go back to a pretrial facility.
And no, there's no good reason for that, in case you're wondering.
And this just strikes me. This is something Angela sent me too. It says, there are exceptions, extreme danger to others. And she says, not Rick.
Dr. Walla says not Rick, that he didn't meet that criteria. So Dr. Walla is saying, if he was a normal inmate, there is absolutely no reason he would have been kept in solitary for more than 30 days.
And she doesn't think he was dangerous, but because if he was dangerous, then he would have been able to be I mean, this wouldn't even be an issue. She would have just said, "Oh no, but there was an exception and he was dangerous." So
And there are different levels of solitary. I mean, solitary confinement can also mean a segregated private cell. I mean, if he was at a regular county jail, like every other pretrial defendant, he would be segregated. But it is so very different from solitary confinement at a max security prison. Like, those are different worlds. It is not the same thing. She was asked, how long was Rick there? And she said about 12 months. All right, I'm going to go to the next page. Boner alert. And I made a note about Osbrook here because I was signaling to Bob, who was sitting next to me, that I thought Michael was either involved in this, or I know he told us about it a long time ago. And DB, I think you even, like, we were all like researching this whole thing. So back around 2016, there was a big old lawsuit. IPAC versus IDOC. It's not the prosecutor's thing, I think. Hopefully Michael clarified what the IPAC was. It's the
yeah, I've seen his comment.
Did he clarify? Drawing a blank.
Yeah, he just said it was. I'm looking it up, but he said it was not the prosecutor IPAC.
Right. It's something commission, Indiana, or something council. Public. I don't know. It's basically, it was like the way that I read it is, it's kind of like the board or the council that makes sure human rights aren't being violated. Almost like an ACLU or something like that. Are you looking it up? I was going to look it up. Are you going to look it up?
No, I'm looking it up.
Okay. I think I have it in a Google Drive somewhere because I have all the documents. I could probably look that up too.
Yeah, I'm looking.
And Diener didn't like this, by the way, because as soon as this got mentioned, she was like, I object. So she didn't want this being talked about.
Yeah, whatever hope I had for Diener being a like kind of leveling the playing field, I was wrong about it seems like.
She was a mess when she finally got around to cross-examining Walla. She took like 2 minutes in between every single question she asked. Every single question she asked was just like the most basic, seemingly not important question. And then she would spend 2 minutes flipping pages in her binder and then ask another pointless question.
Did she get overruled at all?
Yes, she did.
Interesting.
A couple of times. I think every time, actually. Anyways, I'll move on. When you find it, let me know. Shout it out.
Yeah,
So,
I'm looking.
Brad brings up, he wants to ask her some questions about the IPAC. I think he calls it iPass sometimes. Hopefully it's IPAC and not iPass. Anyways, versus IDOC, which was a major case that was held in a federal court in the Southern District Court of Indiana. Diener objects. This isn't relevant. She says, Dr. Walla isn't qualified to talk about a case in 2016 that didn't have anything to do with her. Like, this doesn't involve her. And Rosie says, this case is when these policies were actually born. Rosie offers a show of proof. Goal says, go ahead and prove it. Let's see it. So Goal allows him to do am I saying that right? A show of proof. Y'all know what I mean.
Yeah, offer of proof.
Offer of proof. So Rosie hands Goal an exhibit from the 2016 case. Hands it to Goal. Points out sections 27, 28, 29, specifically refers to the DSM-4 regarding major depressive disorder, how major depressive disorder equals serious mental illness, and that this was eventually adopted by the court. Like, federal court of Indiana adopted this policy, and it is like in the fucking books now.
Oh, it's IPAS. Okay, thank you, Luke.
Oh, iPass. Sorry, I don't know why I said iPack. He did keep saying iPass.
Yep, but this is the 2016 case, it looks like.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, Judge Jessica, I do believe. I'm looking now.
Okay, good. So it's kind of like, shame on you, Department of Corrections. You violated rights, was like the summary. And then all kinds of new policies and procedures surrounding solitary confinement, treatment of prisoners, mental illness, psychological issues, like things were born from this lawsuit and put on paper that DOC has to follow like the Bible right now. Diener was pissed. We could see her from the back just doing this. Like she was just sitting there shaking her head. She was mad about it. Rosie hands Dr. Walla some documents, refreshing her on the exceptions of client-patient privilege, and reminds her of the one she forgot to mention. When her patient is making statements related to the homicide they are charged or convicted of, that's not privileged anymore. Rick was not informed of this exception, per Dr. Walla. Rosie then decides he next wants to discuss the Code of Conduct by APA, which is the American Psychologist
Psychological Association.
Goal says, let's take a 10-minute break, which was like a relief for everybody because Walla had been up there for like an hour and a half at that point. I get up to leave. I'm gonna like run to the bathroom real fast, and Janice and Kathy are both just sitting there with just tears pouring down their face. I just kind of like put my hand on their shoulder and tapped them as I went by. They had some other people sitting with them, comforting them. But this shit was
okay.
heavy.
I have an excerpt from Sleuthy Goosey. She sent something. It says the definition of serious mentally ill is. This is based on that agreement. Prisoners who have a current diagnosis or evidence of any diagnosis, Statistical Manual 4, Axis 1 diagnosis, who are receiving treatment for such diagnosis, or prisoners who have been diagnosed with a mental disorder and are worsened by confinement in the SHU. Seriously mentally ill prisoners will no longer be placed in the SHU. Well, it's not the SHU. It's just some random cell in the back of the fucking prison.
This is such a big deal. Like, this is why they have been like banging on walls. Like, they're not just being dramatic and frivolous when they say his rights are being violated. Like, his literal fucking rights have been violated. Like, nobody can debate that. Hopefully Gold doesn't debate that. It's crazy. Usually when I put little cloud things around in statements, it's just kind of like my train of thought, because Diener keeps by the way, Nick didn't talk for the entire day. Like,
ooh, Nick, where you at, bud?
Tom Selleck said over there didn't say a word the entire day. So yesterday, Luttrell was pretty much the only one who talked. Today, Stacey Diener was the only one who talked.
I just have another excerpt too that I want to add to this. And feel free, if you guys are reading this, paste quotes in the chat from this, if you'd like. So the parties agree that it is incumbent upon IDOC to provide appropriate mental health treatment for seriously mentally ill prisoners. That must take place in a setting other than the secure housing unit. Now, we could all see their argument being, well, he's not a prisoner, right? Because a prisoner is somebody who's been convicted of a felony. I think a lot of the language is interchangeable, but there is some specification in the IDOC policies and procedures for pretrial inmates versus prisoners. But I don't know. It's something that we need to understand a little bit better.
Rosie was heated. I mean, he was heated. Like when people say like these attorneys are like they're just doing their job. They're just doing their job. They're just trying to get that book deal. Like he was passionate. Like he meant it. He was mad about this stuff. A note I made because Diener kept saying this. She kept trying to bring it back to, Judge, the only thing we need to figure out is if Richard Allen was coerced and influenced by his environment. She kept trying to like bring it back to that.
What, Diener said that?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Well, then that's not an issue, ma'am.
Like, that don't impress me much. I wasn't very like, there's a couple of things she said that I've been like, damn, that's strong. Okay, she got me there. She's strong. But today, like, she had nothing.
Yeah, like are you joining in the defense's motion here, ma'am? Well, all we have to do is prove that they tortured him.
Like, all we have to do is prove. Like, I'm sorry, was Dr. Walla's literal statement of whatever. Go back.
Yeah, whatever it was.
Like, I mean, she literally said it in like 5 different ways. Like, due to the stress he is experiencing, he is diagnosed as having a psychotic break. Like, get me out of here. I want off this ride.
And woman doing impossible things. She asked, he is not a prisoner? ? He can leave voluntarily. It's not that I get that he is, for us, like he's a prisoner, right? But it's just that I seen another thing that was breaking down how if somebody is pretrial and being held in a correctional facility like a prison, that they try to play semantics with the word inmate versus prisoner. And I don't know if that's going to be one of the challenges that they're going to have to this here if they do apply this case. But this is why this is frowned upon, putting somebody who's not technically been convicted in this type of situation.
Where's Angela? I see she's on there. Like, I thought she'd be like, is she breaking everything in the house right now?
Dude, who knows what she's doing?
Like, is she Justin Bieber just stomping up and down the hallway? Like, what is she doing?
She had a prior engagement.
Do what? She ain't doing shit. Hold on, I'm turning my camera off real quick. I'll be right back. All right, what page are we on? We on 15?
Yep, 15.
All right, so it's now 3:15 p.m. Rosie says, Mr. Allen contends he was treated in a way inconsistent with guidelines. And then he mentioned something about as he intends to file a motion for disability with the state. I don't know what that means. He said it a couple of times, and I don't know what he's talking about.
Well, they filed the tort notice, but also, yeah, I mean, if his conditions, regardless of if he, let's say he's adjudicated to be not guilty and acquitted, and I mean, these conditions.
It sounds like that was being set up here.
Yeah, like he's going to have to file for disability and he's going to have an SSI, some type of claim. I mean,
I read this. Like, he's going to fucking get you when he's found not guilty.
Yeah. Crazy.
So he mentioned something about that. And then Diener pipes up and says, Dr. Walla has no authority to declare, things like this. If DOC violated policies, with his serious mental illness, like we still have to prove that a human created the environment for him to be victim of coercion. And then Rosie mentioned something about foundation, and I think he asked the judge, like, can I set the foundation for this? Judge says yes. Rosie asks, Dr. Walla, are you familiar with the DSM-4? She actually says, well, now we're using the DSM-5. And he says, right, but you're familiar with the DSM-4. And she says, yes. And he said, it's like the Bible for you, right? And she says, yes. Are you familiar with, what does this say? Are you familiar with the lawsuit between iPass and iDoc? She says, yes.
Right, because this is talking about DSM-4 diagnosis in that lawsuit, because
because that's what it
it's the
references.
older lawsuit.
She says, yes, I am familiar with the settlement. He says, are you aware that the settlement defined serious mental illness and was adopted by the courts and the DOC? She says, yes. Rosie tells Judge Gohl, as the lead psychologist, she does have the authority and experience to speak to what governs the DOC regarding treatment of their patients. Diener says, Dr. Walla, you said Mr. Allen did not meet DOC criteria? And Dr. Walla says yes. And I put a question mark by there because I was confused by that question. Diener mentions the 30-day policy for how long they can be in solitary, and that Allen had a brief psychotic disorder. Dr. Walla says even brief psychotic disorder meets the threshold for serious mental illness and a 30-day solitary policy.
This Kokomo, Indiana individual is very knowledgeable. Appreciate you stopping by. They said the sheriff of Cass County went to court to fight him in being housed at the newest secure new jail facility in the whole state because of the budget being located 15 minutes from Delphi. That's correct.
And that's great and all, but
not good enough.
Like none of that goes into considerations when talking about a safekeeping order.
And I'm sorry, guys, the feds are not going to be the hero of this story. They're just not.
I wish the DOJ would. I wish the feds would. I wish anybody would. But I mean, like, everything I hear is like everybody's hands are tied until there's a conviction.
Anybody else want to volunteer for typing up some pages? We have page 5 covered already. Anybody else? Let me know. Tag me in the chat.
Can't you plug this into some fancy thing that?
Yes, I tried to earlier, and it said, which chicken head, or I'm sorry, not chicken head. Which chicken did you give a pen to? No, I'm just kidding. Your handwriting is good.
Diener argues, so this would be a new diagnosis for Rick, right? And if there were hearings, Dr. Walla can't speak about if it was determined safekeeper status overruled the serious mental illness 30-day policy. I don't she was just throwing things into the air and seeing what stuck. I don't know where she was going with that. Diener asked, how does a diagnosis of serious mental illness change anything about the exception to doctor-patient privilege regarding statements made about the homicide they're charged with? Rosie says, my hand was cramping up into a claw shape at this point. What does it say? Rosie says, okay. This is where, I guess Judge Gohl was like, shut the fuck up. And Rosie goes back to questioning Dr. Walla. And this is kind of where it got a little uncomfortable. And Dr. Walla had to summon all the courage and guts she had within her to just sit there and smile and take it on the chin while she's being asked these questions. And Rosie said, let's discuss your personal knowledge of Rick's case. He asks, you followed the Delphi case on social media? She says, yes. He says that involved listening to podcasts and various forms of content produced about the Delphi case. She says, yes, pretty much from the beginning. Not right away, but pretty close to the beginning since 2017. He said, you followed it on Facebook? She says, yes. He says, you had significant knowledge before ever treating Alan? She says, yes. He said, you even visited the Monon High Bridge intentionally, out of curiosity. You went there with your boyfriend intentionally when you were driving through the state and wanted to make a detour to go visit the bridge. She said, yes.
Ooh.
And I mean, just smiled and answered his questions, and just I was happy for her, you know, like we've all been there. We've all done some shit we weren't really proud of and didn't want to admit to. And she was just like, I'm going to put on my big girl panties and take it.
So she's a true crime fan. And then she gets to be the psychologist. Oh my God.
Yeah. Okay. He asked her, did you start following it even more closely after the stuff came out about Keegan Kline? She says, yes. And hold on to your britches, because I don't know, did y'all touch on those things I highlighted earlier where I said I feel like Rosie's going somewhere with this?
My britches are held, and I'm not sure, but continue.
Remember
please.
the thing I was telling y'all, like, pay attention to this when they asked the warden, do you have access to like look up information about inmates? Like, do you have sort of like system? And then he asked,
You couldn't in Pendleton.
yeah. And then he asked Maps the same question. He was like, if you wanted to look up, and the warden was like, no, I don't have that. We just have a room that has packets, like physical files that he can look at. And, you know, could you look that up for somebody at Wabash? And the
What
warden
page are
was
you on?
like,
I'm sorry.
huh?
Are you on page 15 still, or
16.
Okay, cool. Sorry, go ahead.
And then he asked Maps the same question. She was like, yeah, we have this system called Delta. And she's like, if you wanted to look up information about an inmate at Pendleton, could you? And she's like, yeah. And he asked her, who has access to Delta? And she specifically said, wardens, investigators, like all these people. And hopefully you noted earlier, something the judge did at the very beginning is she issued an order of separation. So none of these witnesses that were called today could be in the room while the other testified. And they were forbidden to talk to each other in the hallway or anything about what they were asked or what they testified to, or she would slap them with contempt of court. So that was kind of interesting. So did you follow it more closely after, you know, the Keegan Kline stuff came out? She says, yes. He said, were you very interested in the Keegan Kline angle? She says, yes. Did you start following the case even more closely after Alan was arrested? She says, yes. He said, did you intentionally make it part of your routine to listen to podcasts and stuff about Delphi on your commute to and from work? She says, yes.
Oh.
Keep in mind, Alan went to Westville almost immediately, and she started seeing him
Straight to Westville.
Day one when he arrived at Westville.
Out of all of the facilities in the DOC, to have a psychologist that's such a true crime fan and have an exception to confessions, this is very strange.
Yes. Then it got really hairy. He said, is it true you sought out info regarding Keegan Kline at your work? She said,
is that the guy with the Dropbox?
She says, yes. He said, did you use the Insight software, which Insight, I guess, was the program before.
Like on-site.
A different program. Maybe it's like the program psychologists have access to. I'm not really sure. It was mentioned earlier. But she used this Insight software at work to look up information about Keegan Kline.
Maybe like a filing? Could she see a legal document?
She could. She could read private documents. She could read about very personal histories about these inmates. Things
Okay, we're not flipping the page
Nobody-
until I get one more volunteer to type up more pages.
all kinds of stuff.
Okay, so she could look up. Okay, everything that she would need to know, really.
Stuff none of us would ever know. Yeah. And he confirmed, you did this on Keaton Klein. She says, yes. He asks, is this a policy violation? She says, yes. All right, next page. He asked, did you make some comments on Facebook after Rick Allen was arrested and had been your patient regarding podcasts you recommend, YouTube creators you regularly listen to? She says, yes, I did that in 2024. He says, at one point you talked to Rick about social media content. And she says, yes, I told him he had supporters out there, which I don't hate it. I don't hate it. I'm sorry. Because
Wait, so
Rick
she.
thought everyone hated him.
Oh, and maybe him. Did he say who his favorite channels were? No, I'm just kidding. That's fucked up. Yeah. So I mean, maybe some type of effort of people getting eyes on him helped him, and maybe his wife too, who felt they were completely alone.
Maybe. Next, Rosie hands her documentation about ethical considerations and principles set in place from the American Psychological Association. He points out Principle B, which concerns accepting your responsibilities and seeking to resolve any conflict. He said, do you think your social media activity could be considered a violation? She said, I wouldn't disagree with that. When he asked regarding Principle E, concerning rights to patient dignity and privacy, do you acknowledge your posting on a Facebook group runs afoul? And she wouldn't really agree to that. She said, I kind of feel like that's a gray area. He said, regarding the conflict of interest principle, do you agree that a conflict arose whenever you started being very personally and legally involved with Rick's care? She says yes. He said, do you think participating online could interfere with your objectivity? And she very adamantly said no. I was not using anything I read or consumed or heard when I treated him. So she very strictly maintains that she was able to separate her entertainment value and hearing about the Delphi case didn't affect how she viewed and treated Rick as a patient. He asked, are you following any other cases or any other patients that you treat? She said no. All right, we go to the next page. Rosie got a little pissy here, he wasn't taking it easy on her. He said, you obtained confidential info about Rick, correct? She says yes. He says, you made notes about that, right? She says yes. And he said, and then you went and destroyed those notes. She said yes. I mean, even though she did fill out her DOC template about things that were discussed, technically she destroyed her notes that she made in her sessions with Rick. And Rosie says that's a violation of Rule 4.0. And she says, I'm not sure everybody does it. What else am I supposed to do with all of that paper? It's just what we do at DOC. Rosie said, this rule says you must have a conversation about privacy and confidentiality, as well as any exceptions to privacy and confidentiality. Did you do that? She says, I don't think so. Another doc may have. Rosie points out other standards of record keeping, shows her the APA guidelines. And then she was like looking over it for a long time, just like flipping through it. And Rosie said, I get the impression that you aren't familiar with this. And she says, I'm probably not as familiar with it as I should be. And then repeats again, in terms of destroying our original handwritten notes. I don't know. It's just, we've always done it.
Okay. And I know I've heard that the Harshman stuff is supposed to be more informative of what happened, but you did not hear the Harshman stuff, so we're just not going to be able to be talking about that. We'll get there if notes come out about it.
Oh yeah, I'm sure we will. Hopefully Bob stayed for the whole thing. We'll get it from him. Then Rosie went through the rules around looking out for maintaining strict records for potential litigation. It's a liability for DOC if records get subpoenaed, but they were destroyed. Next page, we get another Diener objection. Diener objects and says, it appears that he's trying to discredit Dr. Walla, but how does any of this support the claim that his environment was coercive? Which was such a weak objection, in my opinion. Rosie points back to Judge Diener and says all kinds of stuff about this was violating his due process with the safekeeping order without a hearing, placing him in DOC care under DOC rules and procedures, etc. And Goal, like, flat out says, I agree with Mr. Rosie. It is relevant. And then I made my own note. What the fuck is going on?
Very nice. Okay.
Yeah. Rosie hands Dr. Walla social media guidelines from APA. He says, do you agree that your comments on social media were improper? She says, I do, and acknowledges if I had to do it all over again, I would not have done that.
Okay.
Rosie hands her some DOC directives, 4.03 something.
Well, her attorneys are probably encouraging her to be as forthcoming as possible, because the real issue is going to be whether or not she keeps her job, most likely. And she's going to keep her job by saying that she 100% violated the rules, and there are rules in place, and that she acted alone in violating these rules. And that's going to take the pressure off of DOC to take any responsibility institutional wise. So it makes sense that she's being forthcoming about this, given her potential employment being on the line.
Yeah, I mean, her employment and her license in general. He mentions the iPass settlement regarding treatment of prisoners that are in the restricted housing unit. He identifies that in this settlement, there's a list of facilities that are considered appropriate for prisoners that have serious mental illness. Westville is not on that list.
Okay.
Regarding the 30-day policy, she agrees it was only ignored because of his safekeeping order. She says, it's just what I was told. It wasn't my call. I wish I could have done something about it.
Leak it.
Huh?
Why don't you leak it?
Leak it.
Okay, page 20.
Page 20, she said a statement that I put in big old fat letters because it was important. Dr. Walla has documented in her notes on paper that Richard Allen was suffering from psychosis induced by stressors pertaining to his confinement. What the fuck else do you need? At that point, Rosie was done. Rosie out. She had been in that seat with Rosie for about 2.5 hours. He was like, thank you. Goodbye.
And I'm hearing this too, what Chelsea says here. People are saying that Harshman said RA confession included details only the killer would know. I think I've also heard that it said it's something about a box cutter, and we'll have to see what it says. I don't know.
Yeah, the box cutter thing we referenced earlier was one of them.
I would just say keep in mind that box cutters happen to be used in violent crimes all the time, and they're fairly it's a fairly standard identification to look at what a potential box cutter injury could be.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, the box cutter was a weapon, and he threw it away in the trash at work.
I know it's like, it's silly to be like, well, if I was in that situation, what I would have, like, I'm not scared of a fucking box cutter. Give me a break. Like, that's not a threatening weapon. Just fuck off, box cutter. Get out of here. Was that before or after he shot them in the back and molested them? This is like all I really have on Diener's cross-examination with Walla, because this is the point where I was like, is this going anywhere? I mean, she was there for like an hour, and like every question was just more pointless than the one before. And then she would spend like 2 minutes like flipping through a binder between every single question she asked Dr. Walla. I tried to note anything that I thought was of importance from what Diener asked her, but they're just.
Yes, Fiend, box cutters are used in a fraction of knife homicides, fraction of a fraction knife of multiple homicides. He did use a gun, allegedly, Bridge Guy did, but to intimidate them. But also, when I was talking about box cutter injuries, I'm not necessarily talking about box cutter homicides. Too, like a lot of box cutter assaults are survived, but yeah, there's a lot to read out there about those types of injuries.
I mean, maybe there was more. I don't know. Like, I probably should have stayed for Harshman. I was just like, I was just panicking. It was like almost 6 o'clock, and I was like, I gotta get the fuck out of here.
Did you leave early to report this out, to change the narrative?
I did.
Without hearing.
Well, I did. Bob told me to go do that.
Oh, okay. So we could get ahead of, the Harshman stuff.
Yeah.
Oh,
Bob, like, I got Harshman. Get out there and push that shit. And I was like, I'm on it, Bob.
good job. Yeah. Harshman is an officer that overheard and sent only incriminating information to Holman to listen to.
Yeah,
Well,
if you go to, I heard the very beginning of when he got up there. The very last page I have in here, 26. Yeah, that was like the first part of Harshman. He's been with ISP for about 30 years. He's been a detective for about the past 17. He has assisted in homicides. He got involved in Delphi originally in early 2020 when he was on a U.S. Marshals Regional Task Force. And he said he reached out to Holman many times, offering their services, offering their help, and Holman kind of just kept ghosting him about it. And then eventually, after the arrest, Holman's like, you know what? I got something you can help me with. And Harshman was assigned basically like full time to be in charge of listening to, observing. Rosie called it surveilling. Holman called it monitoring all of Richard Allen's phone calls. Go to page 24. This was kind of when Rosie and Dina were kind of going back and forth with Dr. Walla. On page 24, I'm like, this is all confusing. I can't follow shit Dina asks. That was like my note to myself. It was just very confusing. There was a time when Dr. Walla was talking about a day in April. She's like, Rick was very talkative that day. And she kind of like looked over at him and just kind of like smiled in like a very like mom way. Like, he was saying a lot to say that day. I don't really know what that means, but I mean, I think it was her version of being like, we know each other, buddy. And he's like talking about like if he was going to kill himself, how he was going to do it. And he'd probably like kill all his family and friends and then himself. And he'd climb up a sink and do something in his cell. And then Rick said, but I'm too much of a coward and I don't want to die. And fuck, that's sad. Fuck, that's sad. Too much of a coward and I don't die.
And keep in mind, like the contamination possibility of people telling him what the weapon was, or I heard you did it with this, or I heard you did it with that.
Absolutely. And we know his companions were in his ear asking him stuff, telling him stuff, going back and talking on the phone to their families about it, and then running back to him. You know, all of these guys are trying to get like something they can use to bargain their time served with. It's even noted in here somewhere on one of these pages that their actions as part of the plus program, the companion program, absolutely could have impact on their time served, which is what I did
they get favorable parole
with Lacey Patton.
Yeah, favorable parole consideration.
I did a whole write-up about what the fuck is going on with Lacey Patton. He was just let out of jail. He was just fucking let out after Mullins came and got statements and put it in a transcript about what Rick Allen told him. They just set him free.
Mullins.
And the judge and the prosecutor in Lacey Patton's case were like, excuse me? Y'all let him out? We didn't authorize this. Put him back in fucking jail. He hasn't finished his sentence, and he's a danger to his ex that he has stalked and threatened, like to the point of where he was actually put in jail for it. Like, he is a danger to her, and we didn't allow him to get out of jail.
Yeah.
And I'm like, maybe I've got my foil on. Maybe I'm being a conspiracy about that. They didn't like let him out on they just set him fucking free on his own, recognizance, whatever that word is. Like, they were just like, bye. And the judge and prosecutor were like, fucking what?
Unreal.
Anyway, that's still, I mean, there's still some foil around that. I don't think it's been proven yet, but it's questionable at best. On May 3rd, on May 3rd, she's seeing Rick. He asks for help calling his wife because his tablet was broken. He tried, Dr. Walla helped find him one of these cordless phones that they had there. Helped find Kathy's number for him. That was like on like a log list. Helped him dial Kathy's number from this phone. Like, Dr. Walla was helping him do this.
And these are basic things that somebody, like dialing a phone, somebody could do if they were in alert and oriented to the where they're at and that they're a human.
He had to do all this for him. She even had to find his wife's phone number because I guess he didn't know it.
Yeah, that could be it. Or
he said,
he's just
call my wife. Kathy did not answer. And then they're talking about how long was he without a tablet? Because this was in May. We were about to go into a safekeeping hearing where they're talking about how he broke his tablet and they provided him with another one per Dr. Walla's requests.
Which is no little thing, I feel.
No, and Dr. Walla is saying, I'm not sure. I know he got a new one right before he went to Wabash. And the attorneys are like, excuse me? That was in December. Like, we were under the impression he got a new tablet before his original safekeeping hearing last June. And she's like, I don't know. They're like, were two of them broken? And she's like, maybe, I can't remember. And at this point, I see Rick leaning over and whispering in one of the attorney's ears. And that attorney is whispering something into the other attorney's ears. So I thought that was good. Like Rick was
Bullshit.
Rick was like engaged. He was listening to what was being said, and he was telling his attorneys that's not fucking right.
Assisting his own defense.
I thought that was good. I thought that was a good sign. And then on page 25, the next page, Rick says, I want to try to call her again. I want to tell my wife what I've done, and I want you to hear it too, he said to Dr. Walla.
Oh my God. What?
Verbatim.
So she provided him the device to confess to his wife on?
I mean, I guess he was just like insistent. And Rosie interrupts. And Rosie says, did he tell you what his wife said to him? And Dr. Wallace says, yes. Rick told me she doesn't believe me. Isn't that sad?
That's horrible.
I guess this was like the incident when she abruptly hung up. She said she doesn't believe me.
So is that there are 5 more times of that after this?
I don't know. It was really hard to follow. Like, I mean, from her, this was the only instance she had awareness of.
That's oh my God.
And I guess this was the call where the warden confirms and everything else. This was one of the times he said, you know, I did it. I killed those girls. He might have mentioned them by name. He might have said Libby and Abby, but there was no substance to it. There was no detail. I did it. I killed those girls. She doesn't believe me. And I'd like to point out this was on May 3rd. This was on May 3rd. And if we go back to page 12, let's see what was happening around May 3rd. Around May 3rd, let's see, about a week and a half before May 3rd, she'd had a conversation with him about incompetency to stand trial. She thought things were going downhill and he was having disjointed thoughts. May 3rd, he said, I want to confess. She questioned if he was being truthful. Any of the times he said things like this. On May 17th, his disorganized thinking was accelerated. On May 18th, he was due for his next injection of Haldol. So on May 3rd, he was on a regular maintenance program of Haldol. On May 18th, he was in a vegetative fucking state of depression. So people want to act like, oh, he only started doing all this after he confessed. Let's back up. This was on May 3rd that he called his wife and did this, okay? On May 21st, he wasn't able to, like, she was like, you're incompetent to fucking go to trial. You're having disjointed thoughts. A couple of weeks before that, 2.5 weeks before he wanted to call his wife and say, I did it, 2.5 weeks prior to that, she labeled him as having a grave disability, eating feces, running and banging his head against his cell wall. This is all of the shit that happened before Nick went up there in front of the judge in June and proudly proclaimed that he had made incriminating statements and confessed to his wife. So no, this didn't start after he confessed. Like, hate to break it to you, hate to come in with the fact busting, but all this talk we've been hearing for over a year now about how, oh, he only started eating his paperwork and confessing to his wife. You know, he only had a psychotic break after he did that from all of his guilt. Fuck all of that. He was doing it for over a month prior to deciding he wanted to call his wife and confess. Like, For over a month prior, he was taking running starts from one side of his 12-foot cell and like crashing his fucking face and head into the wall. His entire head and face was covered in bruises and blood. Suicidal ideation, insomnia, hopelessness. Death would bring relief. Poor, critical, deteriorating. I don't feel right. More critical, emergent involuntary medication, grave disability. A hearing was held to talk about getting him on a schedule of involuntary medications. He's incompetent to stand trial, disjointed thoughts. Then he called his fucking wife and mom and said, I want to confess. Then.
And that's called safekeeping.
Yeah, that's called safekeeping.
Unreal.
So that's how the I want to call my wife and confess situation went down.
Handed him the phone.
Helped him find a cordless phone. Helped him find Kathy's phone number. Helped him dial Kathy's phone number. When she didn't answer, she tried again.
Criminality, I believe the psychiatrist prescribed it based off from her recommendation. There was a psychiatrist that also seen him that was a supervisor for the medication for IDOC for Centurion, but I think that's in a filing somewhere.
I think that is Dr.
Goldberg? No, is that the...
Yeah, I think it is.
Isn't that the ISP guy though?
Oh,
No, maybe it is. I don't know. Dr. Martin Leewood Love says. Hi, Leewood Love.
Dr. Martin sounds right.
Question here from Criminality. Did anyone ask Dr. Walla if she talked to the medical team about his psychosis and the use of medication?
Absolutely. I mean, but again, she would always kind of go back to, like, I just work here. I can say anything I want all day long. They ain't listening to me. Like, best she could do was, if you want to go to page 22, I made a note on here that she often looked at Rick after she spoke. She says, like, the quotes, like a lot of the quotes that we will hear about the confessions came from the companions. She notes that when he came in to Westville on like one of their first meetings, he told her he wasn't like a very religious person. And then sometime around when he just really started crashing in early April, he was talking about finding God, which is bizarre for somebody who comes in not religious. Does he relate this newfound sense of religion to the crimes? Diener is asking him this. She says, I don't think so. And then Diener asked her to read the last line of some like daily log she reported on, and that says yes. His affect was all over the place. He'd go from smiling to crying. He'd start sharing information without any prompt. And she says his reports about his feelings are questionable. AKA, like he's saying, I feel good. I'm doing great. I have found God and like I want to make God happy. And she's saying she's questioning if this is genuine or not. His overall affect did improve with the weekly injections. She told him it was not in his best interest to make statements to companions, and his attorneys would not advise him to do so. She also noted on one day that he seemed to be feigning memory lapse and confusion. Like she thought he was kind of faking it. And hold on to that thought, because she tied that fucking shit together later on. He seemed to kind of be feigning his memory lapses and confusion, even though he was also kind of like seeming to improve with these injections. On one day, she was asked to decide if this was psychosis versus feigning. She noted he was getting injections plus nighttime oral medications, all Haldol, by the way. Just this dude was on so much Haldol. Because he's even with the weekly injections, he wasn't sleeping. He was still staying awake for days. So
Let's see a comment here. Question: is there a medication to cure child killing back in 2017 that Rick could have taken to not be in the position in the first place?
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
we're not sure about that. It's kind of a bizarre question, but we'll have to do some research on that one.
Go Google that, Brian. Get back with us.
And doesn't he have a tort claim?
Who?
Maybe. RA did. I think that was Rosie. Not sure though. Probably a different type.
Maybe.
Never mind.
You'll know about that. So when he was getting weekly injections of Haldol plus nightly oral Haldol for sleep, there was still many days where communication was impossible. Dr. Walla notes he might have actually been over-medicated. Sometimes he would just like sleep a lot, like for days at a time. But Alan would say he's not sleeping. Alan would say he was just laying there. He was also put on Prozac. I made a note when, because there's no note about when, because this was a medication he was on pre-arrest. So he eventually was put on Prozac at some point. She didn't say when that started. Dr.
Yes,
Martin.
Sloopy Goosey says yes. Rosie served the tort claims notice for his treatment. It's something Dole used against him. Yeah, you remember that, guys? She was kind of saying that they were making it all up and that this was like a cash grab or something, I think. She didn't say that, obviously, but I think that maybe they were being ridiculous with those claims. But here we are.
So Dr. Martin is, I guess, the doctor who's over Dr. Walla. She came and saw him about once a week. She was sometimes consulted about Alan. Dr. Walla notes Alan improved eventually and the Haldol was discontinued.
Y'all ever heard of callback?
What's that?
A callback? It's where you reference something that was previously like discussed.
What is it, Fiend? Or are you just talking about your appearance here?
No, definitely not my appearance. No,
I said
sorry. I mean, it could be that would be a potentially applicable situation, but no, like so I think I've got confirmation that the personality disorder was dependent personality disorder, DPD, not borderline personality disorder, which is often associated with much more severe things.
Great. Anything else you've been hearing rumblings of?
Rumblings of?
There's a lot of rumbling going on.
I don't. I mean, nothing that I would take under like great consideration.
Advisement?
No, yeah, under advisement. Like, I mean, I think that box cutter thing is kind of weird because, like we see the property record receipts and like Rick Allen had like a ton of like fancy knives that were at his house. And you're gonna tell me box cutter? Okay.
Yeah, you're supposed to be specific.
I'm a little bit skeptical about that. Like, okay, but like
he got the box cutter from CVS also, but he bought it at CVS. Holman says, "We confirmed they sold box cutters." Like, okay,
shit.
Super investigator, good job.
Not that they sold them. Like, if he's working at CVS, he's obviously gonna have a free box cutter. He doesn't even need to buy one. Like, that's just dumb.
Well, the
You're
box
not gonna
cutter thing
buy,
is
buy
so
a box cutter at CVS when you work at CVS and you're opening boxes. Like, also, he's got like a shit ton of like Bowie knives at home. Like, you can cut boxes open better with those.
well. The box cutter idea is that it's disposable and not missed, you know. But there's
Like,
probably a ton of conversations we're gonna have about this for months. So
you're a psychopath with a fetish for like murdering two teenage girls you don't know out in the woods, right? And you're like, just like you spend all day, like you and your sexual sadist self, just like, oh, I can't wait to do the box cutter. Like, what? No.
yeah, it's crazy. We'll see. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot
I
more to
mean,
come.
people don't just carry around. I mean, some
You
people
don't
do.
have a gun and a box
Some people do carry a
cutter
box cutter around with them all the time. But like, you're talking
and a gun.
like
Don't forget the
carpet men and stuff. Like, I don't know, like working at a pharmacy or like working at CVS. Like, no, you're not just always carrying a box cutter. Like, or like, there's also people that just always carry around a gun and a knife, or they always carry around a knife, or they always carry around a gun. But like, totally different things.
Yes,
I
purple.
got two
That's right.
right now.
Purple amaryllis.
Yeah.
That is a Stanley is what they sometimes refer to a box cutter in a different country. A Stanley knife.
It's a little bit more specific than that, but yeah, close
But that's what they
enough.
call them in a lot of countries. It's a little
It's a
bit
brand,
little bit
right?
different. Right, but Kleenex is a brand too, and sometimes people call great value
Gotcha.
tissue paper for your nose. Kleenex.
Gotcha. Yeah, I would get that people do that in other countries, but I don't think we do it here.
Yeah, and T made a good point. They would have to. Is he a medical examiner going to say, or did they already say that this was a potential murder weapon? And if they did,
No.
why were they not specifically
I mean, I think
looking
the
for
general
that type of weapon
consensus
in a
are
search warrant?
likely not.
Bladed, like, whatever.
Okay, well we've been on for a while. I want to get final thoughts and get.
There's one last thing. If you go to page, like, I'm gonna run, like, give me like 1 minute. Go to 25 and 26, or to 25.
Yep.
Or Rosie is kind of having his final thoughts with Dr. Walla. Okay, first of all, he references their private session cage. He kind of references like Silence of the Lambs. And for some reason, Diener was like, objection. But then Dr. Wallace says that she's never seen it. And I was like, well, that's a big old red flag. Sure.
I'm going to agree to disagree.
Psychologist.
I don't think it's a red flag that a actual psychologist has not seen Silence of the Lambs.
She was like, I don't know anything about that. I was like, wait a minute, lady.
That's actually probably like better that she doesn't know what that is about.
Perhaps, yeah. Rosie, because Diener's cross was kind of trying to drill on the fact that a few times Walla noted that she thought Rick might be feigning. She never used the word malingering, which was interesting. Diener never said the word malingering. She said feigning. So Rosie addresses that. He said, Rick was getting Haldol shots in June, even though you noted he might be feigning. And this is when Rosie's getting like really pissed off and detailing he was running from one side of his cell to the other, smashing his head and face into the wall. And next page, he said, there's actual tests. There's tests that you can get and do to see if someone's feigning, right? Do you use them? And Dr. Wallace says, no, we don't have them there. And Rosie says, great. So you just give them crayons and pencils, huh? He got mad.
Wow. And I think the reason they're not using the word malingering is that's because it's a medical diagnosis, right?
Probably. I think so. He notes that Rick lost 30 to 40 pounds in 2 months. And even though he was like technically on paper obese at intake, like just based on like his BMI for how tall he is. Dr. Walla agreed, like, no, I wouldn't look at that guy on intake and say he's like really unhealthy or morbidly obese. And there was a final statement that I put in squares because I was like, okay, so if she ever thought he was feigning to her, this is why. Rick apparently made multiple comments to her over a period of time about wanting to go to Logansport State Hospital. Whatever that is. I guess it's probably like a mental institution or something.
Yeah, it is.
He made multiple comments about wanting to go to Logansport State Hospital because he thought his family would at least be able to come see him there. He was trying to get into a mental institution if he was ever faking any of it. He thought if he did that, they'd send him to a mental institution and his family could come see him. But I think it's clear that the vast majority of this was not feigning. Like,
and did Walla say feigning?
Like she made a couple of notes of it, like on a couple of days, like during her rounds or her daily visits. Like there was a couple of times when she was like, is he feigning this? Like things he was saying or doing at that particular moment in time that she didn't really know if it was genuine or not.
Right.
But
and
the vast majority of it was like, this dude is psychotic as fuck.
Okay. And Michael says here, when incompetent to stand trial. And I know some people were asking, like, is this going to be a defense? No, it's not necessarily going to be a defense, but just going to delay the trial that he's not competent. Like he doesn't have the competency for trial, but not
trial. Like maybe he heard that or somebody told him that.
Yeah. Well, I think if you're code E, right?
Yeah, maybe that's where you go if you're code E. He just had a little bit farther to go because apparently.
What else this guy got to do? Holy shit.
Feces and taking a running start and smashing your face against the wall I don't know what the fuck code E is, but that was only code D. I'm dying to know what code E is.
Wild. Okay, well, let's do so is that your final thought? Or do you have any final thoughts after that?
That's all I got. That's all I got, guys.
Okay, well, that's it. We're gonna tweet out some links to the notes in a bit, and then I think Criminality is gonna be going live soon. So if you guys want Criminality's big brain to talk about what she learned today and what people that were there learned today, go check out Criminality. I mean, who am I telling? Like, you guys know what Criminality is, right? But thank you again, Yellow Jacket. Thank you again, Ange. You've been here this whole time, Angela, and just really helping us a lot. So I appreciate it. Also, go report Fiend's channel. But that's it. Any final words, Yellow?
That's it. It was a long day. I'm curious to talk to Bob or somebody who knows what all Harshman said. But it was a lot. It was a lot today. It was a little more emotional today. And I mean, overall, even though it did seem Rosie was in some ways kind of attacking her credibility, because I think that probably in the long run would help get any statements that she's trying to admit thrown out. I mean, she took it like a champ. My impression was she really did take her care of Rick seriously. She cared about him as a human, as a person, as a patient. And at least in her own mind, felt like she could separate her interest in the case from her view of him as a person and a patient. And there really wasn't a whole lot that she said that hurt the defense's assertion that these statements were made involuntarily while being coerced by brutal solitary confinement, illegal civil rights violations in all the ways via DOC and their really valiant safekeeping order.
Unreal. Okay, well, that's it, folks. I'm not a professional YouTuber here, so I'm just gonna hit that end stream.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.